Once upon a time, Freddy, the aquamarine fish, found an old creepy house under the sea. Every day he would hear strange voices, but no one was there. One day he came upon a horrifying ghost fish, only to realize it was his murdered enemy, the shark. Because of that, the ghost shark began to chase Freddy, a bloodthirsty look in his eyes. After that, the murderous shark managed to corner scared Freddy. Finally, Freddy turned himself into a lichen wing, breathed fire on the ghost shark, and escaped into night. Oh, you thought that was it? Well, to be continued.
Once upon a time, I went to my uncle's house with some friends. He had left for the weekend. That evening, I was getting ready for bed, and the door slammed shut behind me, and the lights went out. Because of that, I hid under my blanket and peeked out. There looked like there was something in the shadow in the corner. After that, I tried to call my mom, but my cell phone had no service. A scary man appeared. He grabbed me and started pulling my legs down the stairs. Finally, I kicked free and tackled him. It was one of my cousins with a mask playing one of the worst jokes ever. Ha 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 ha.
All right, this is The House by the Undefeated Black Panthers. Once upon a time, there was a boy who didn't think twice when he walked home. Every day, his parents would warn him of the dangers of Mr. and Mrs. Hawk that lived in the corner house. One day, the boy was walking by that house when suddenly he felt someone or something watching him. Because of that, every time he had to go past that corner house, he would run as fast as he could. After that, he tried to avoid the house, but it was either walk past it or go through the spooky woods. Finally, he was able to sit safely in his car and drive past until one day, him and his friend were driving past that house when
Once upon a time, there was a child that was very poor. He lived in a hobbit hole. His parents were wild squirrel bears, and he was hunting for PB&Js. Every day, he heard a howl coming from the mountains. This howl sent a shiver down his spine. Little did the child know that the howling was from a witch trying to lure the child into the mountains so that she could take him. One day, he was walking to school. He saw a shadow in the sky. The shadowy figure turned out to be the witch that turned his parents into squirrel bears. This witch tormented the child's village by robbing residents of their priceless heirlooms. For those unfortunate souls with no riches, she would curse the families by turning them into squirrel bears. Because of that, the child was forced to become the witch's minion. Secretly, he was stealing her potions to figure out how to reverse the curse the witch had placed on his family and turn them human again. After that, the poor child was captured and put into a cell deep within the ground that was full of the souls that had been wronged. And every night he would have dreams that shook his soul so much that he would wake up still dreaming of the atrocities that he had heard. Finally, what seemed like years of mental degradation He was called up to the witch's house. As he slowly crawled up the stairs, he waited to be hit to get turned into something evil, but it never happened. As he got to the top, he heard one phrase, "You can go." And he froze. All this time here, and all he had done was hide, but now he's free. But as he ran out the door, he knew his mistake. As he turned in horror, his last thought was, "Why?" And his body fell, and his head was gone.
Once upon a time, there was an abandoned house, surrounded by a swarm of tall, scraggly, feral black cats. Every day at midnight, the house would scream. A woman nearby decided to go in the house alone. Because of that, the house's eardrums popped. After that, the house was sitting there crying because he could not hear. Finally, the woman who was nearby never told anyone about it. She would hear the noises every night and just wonder what was really inside that haunted house.
Once upon a time, there was a wood cabin. Every day, there was an old man with a hook and a big bag that went into the cabin. One day, a teenager went to visit the old man and was not seen from that day on. Because of that, the old man was accused of taking the teenager when it wasn't him. After that, the police went out into the forest and checked the cabin. Finally, the police found the teenager, but he was now missing a hand and had a hook where it should be. Cabin man among us, sus.
You're probably wondering, how did it get so dark so quickly? But that's not important. Now it's time for a tale that is sure to give you the Jeepers Creepers. Once upon a time, there was a headless girl. She walked down alleys of dead children. Every day she would look for her head, but would take the heads of children instead. One day she found a boy. The boy looked at her in fear. The headless girl swept him by the ears and dragged him to the alleys. So the little boy screamed and screamed until he couldn't scream anymore. After that, the boy lay down, hardly breathing. He begged for mercy, but the girl wasn't going to set him free. The boy cried and closed his eyes. Finally, daylight rose, and the girl just vanished, and the boy was able to leave.
Firehawks, gather around the campfire. It's spooky story time. Once upon a time, there was an ugly rat. Every day, that rat would sneak into people's houses and move stuff around to make them go insane. One day, he got caught by one of the owners of the house. Because of that, the rat lunged at the owner and started gnawing on their face. After that, the owner became infected with a mutant disease that turned them into giant rat zombies. Finally, the giant rat zombie left the house on Halloween. Because everyone believed this to be a costume, he was able to reign terror, death, and destruction.
Once upon a time, there was a girl who was considered kind of weird because she could see and talk to ghosts. Every day, she would play alone in the woods behind her house. She knew she was safe because her neighbor would look outside the window, watch her, and wave. One day, the neighbor mysteriously died. Because of that, her mother said she couldn't go in the woods anymore. After that, she heard a noise coming from the woods and she had to investigate it. It sounded like a woman crying. She knew she shouldn't go in the woods, but she was curious about that noise. Finally, she found the source of the noise. It was the ghost of her neighbor asking for help. The girl asked how she could help. The neighbor told the girl she could help so she could cross over to the other side. If the girl found the woman's necklace, she could finally cross over. In the meantime, the girl was never alone while playing in the woods.
Once upon a time, during a dark and stormy night, there was a pretty princess who was home alone. She got a random phone call. The phone call was coming from another room in her tree castle. And the voice on the line said, "Do you want to play a game?" One day, there was another phone call from an anonymous black figure with a creepy voice just outside her window. He said, "I see you, princess." Because of that, the princess got very scared and locked all of her doors. After that, she wasn't seen for many years. Some people believe she ran away. Finally, she resurfaced from her tree castle after 50 years to reveal herself as the black figure, a shadow creature. She began terrorizing the people of her tree kingdom for years to come.
Good evening, boys and girls. Story time. Once upon a time, on a normal and peaceful night. A night so normal, well, nothing. Every day at noon, the old lady that lived in the old scary house went to the supermarket. One day, a little boy became suspicious of the old lady and followed her to her house. Because of that, he followed her inside her house. The door closed behind him. After that, no one ever saw the boy again. Finally, after 1 year, a new family moved into the house next door, and their little boy followed the old lady to her house. Never seen. Enjoyed story time. Night, boys and girls.
Once upon a time, there was a spooky witch who lived in a shaggy house at the corner of a neighborhood. Every day she sat in her old house and tried to come up with new potions so she could become famous in the witching world. One day, the neighbor's kids made her angry, so she decided to brew a potion to hex them. She got out her old witcher's pot and started mixing first seaweed and other ingredients. She reached for her ingredients box without looking and accidentally grabbed a piece of bacon instead of the mandrake root. The potion began bubbling furiously and became a mix of dark colors. She tried to fix her mistake, but it was too late. And a Franken pig monster rose from the pot. Because of that, she panicked, but then she realized that maybe the Franken pig was a good creation and decided to release it into the neighborhood to hurt her neighbors. After that, she stepped out of her house for the first time in 50 years. The Franken pig will do. The pig began to run wildly, destroying houses, lawns, and cars. Finally, the witch did a weird thing. She smiled evilly and cackled. Knowing her revenge for her loathsome neighbors had come.
Once upon a time, there was Etole sneaking into an abandoned palace. Every day she kidnapped someone who had a run-in with her, and she changed them into different, horrifying objects. One day she came across a young man who was looking to capture her. He snuck into her palace and found her secret stash of monsters and monstrosities. Because of that, she turned him into a chandelier. After that, she put him in the middle of the lobby, but noticed that some tiles were moving without her command. It was clear something was wrong with the chandelier. Finally, she realized the objects were gaining sentience, and she had to release them, but it was too late. She ran away in a panic, getting chased by them. She realized that the chandelier and other objects will haunt her forever, as warning to everyone not to use witchcraft to create monsters.
Once upon a time, there was a creepy monster in a graveyard. Every day, he whispered stories to the dead. One day, the dead spoke back. Bodies levitated out of the graves and began to roam the streets, looking for an audience for their stories. Because of that, the poor civilians that heard this dreadful story would suddenly head to Roswell, New Mexico, and bought a bag full of beans. After that, the people would uncontrollably eat the beans, which of course made them fart, which made a huge gas signal to direct slimy aliens to invade Earth. Finally, Mark Duran screamed out into the night, "I'm scared!" Mark begged the storytelling zombies and aliens to stop. But it was too late.
Once upon a time, a bunch of happy clowns spent their days performing for a circus called the Zoombini. Every day, Zane went to the circus with his mother, where they enjoyed watching the clowns, which were funny, happy, and all sorts of crazy. One day, there was a chemical outbreak from the pipes under the surface, and acid spilled out onto the water supply. Because of that, the clowns were transformed into zombie clowns because the acid reacted with the wigs on the clowns' heads, and the clowns' makeup began to melt off of their faces and their skin began to hang off of their bones, exposing their muscles and guts. After that, the zombies turned their wrath on the participants. And the first person they went after was Zane, feeding off of his fear until they could get close enough to bite him and turn him into a zombie too. Finally, it was revealed that Zane had actually been the one responsible for the chemical spill, and as a result, he had power greater than the other zombies. He became the zombie king as they roamed, ruling the other zombies as they roamed the earth, turning it into a living nightmare.